Before we dive into the talk track for each of these slides, just a quick word about how and where to use these slides. These are intended to be presented to Salesforce teams. This particular talk track is going to be specifically for those that are supporting the manufacturing vertical, whether core or service. I've presented these slides already to a handful of QBRs. I think these are great slides for that context. These could also be used in one-on-ones with service AEs, field service AEs, core AEs, or RVP teams. So think about this as primarily focused on influencing those who are going to be working directly with the customer on the Salesforce side and are speaking to customers who have asset-centric service or are looking to build out those service capabilities. And my talk track around these slides kind of breaks down into three major parts. One, what we've heard in the field and why we've put an offering together for asset-centric service. Two, some of the high-level capabilities that are conferred with Asset Orbit and the work that we're doing in asset management. And then third, a slide that really has two purposes. The first purpose is to outline some of the more detailed capabilities that we bring with Asset Orbit, but also allows you to do a little bit of education actually for the Salesforce team, providing key terms for them to be listening for in their conversations with customers. And we want them thinking that when they hear these terms, they want to bring NeuroFlash to the table. So my talk track for these three slides goes something a little bit like this. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to your team today. We want to spend a few minutes talking about what NeuroFlash has built out around asset-centric service and some of the background for why we did it and how we think it's going to help you sell more deals in FY25. Salesforce has done a great job over the last several years building out asset-centric service. The core object model is there, the process management capabilities are there, but it's all kind of a skeleton, if you will. There's no meat, there's no flesh on this yet. And so customers are left really with three options fully to build out their asset-centric service capabilities. One is to build them out themselves or with a partner, completely bespoke, customizing all of the capabilities, building out the additional object model that's necessary. That's time consuming and very frankly expensive. Another option, and that's the one that ServiceMax has leaned into, is to provide licensing on top of Salesforce licensing to bring those benefits. ServiceMax did a great job building out additional object model, building their own process management tools to enable customers to accelerate time to value. The challenge there is kind of twofold. One, ServiceMax doesn't sell with Salesforce very effectively, and oftentimes will actually compete with Salesforce and some of the capabilities that Salesforce is looking to confer with asset management. And then secondarily, to bring ServiceMax into an org means stacking licenses. To be able to get the full benefits of Service Cloud and the full benefits of ServiceMax, you have to have two licenses, which for most companies is really expensive. And that goes on for as long as the customer is using those capabilities. The third pathway here is to partner with NeuroFlash, somebody who's built out capabilities on the platform using standard objects, using standard process management tools, and doesn't require license stacking. So we do not require licenses to be added to an organization in order to get the benefits of Asset Orbit. In addition to that, we're more than happy to co-sell with you as the primary point of entry into customers looking to build out asset management capabilities. So we're all the way up through and including the ability to demo the capabilities that are possible on the Salesforce platform. Just some framing for the second slide here. Um, I hit this one pretty quickly. I don't linger on this slide a lot typically. I'm looking to reinforce what we know to be the most important objectives that asset-centric services are looking to deliver, or excuse me, that asset-centric customers are looking to deliver, and then very briefly highlight how Asset Orbit begins to address some of the concerns that customers might have as they try to build this out on Salesforce. So building on the foundation that Salesforce has provided over the last probably 3 or 4 years, really, in asset-centric businesses, Neuroflash has built Asset Orbit to help customers recognize some of those gains that they're looking to achieve in their services business. For many customers, servitization, put air quotes around that, servitization is this journey that many customers are on to build deeper revenue sources through their services business, and ultimately, potentially, not even to sell assets any longer or to sell product any longer to their customers, but to sell asset uptime. So the example, kind of the classic example in the industry is airline jet engines. So GE has begun now, instead of selling engines to airlines, they're selling the uptime, which means that GE is on the hook for all the services, all the maintenance, all the parts, and captures a piece of that business. But they also get recurring revenue from this stream, if you will, of capabilities being delivered through the engine, right? So many customers are looking to advance themselves on a journey towards servitization. And these kinds of capabilities really help to deliver on that. So things like driving additional services revenue, either through service contracts or what I was suggesting around asset uptime, delivering better operational efficiencies. Now, these things aren't trivial. This isn't easy. If it was easy, anybody would be doing it in the software space. It's not. You're having to tie together many disconnected pieces of information and be able to offer those up in a way that are actionable, that the customer is able to monitor their assets and deliver the appropriate service at the appropriate time, at the appropriate cost to their end customer. So being able to visualize assets, know where they are, know what their entitlements are, et cetera, and the ability to manage those in real time at an engagement layer level so that customers are able to recognize the greatest value from those. That sets the foundation. Now, how is that done? Uh, Neuroflash has taken those kinds of capabilities and said, okay, we have the experience in the field through working with multiple customers, including Fortno, which you saw earlier in this deck. We have delivered asset management for customers and then built an accelerator on top of what we've learned. Um, what we are positioning is a $70,000 one-time fee that allows customers to gain that insight into their assets, be able to break down the asset to the component level in a hierarchical model. Think about a complex piece of machinery that needs to be decomposed to be able to service it and to be able to replace parts, to be able to perform routine maintenance, et cetera. You need to be able to kind of understand the relationships between those assets. And what we see often in industrial manufacturing is multiple layers of warranties and service contracts against those assets as well. In other words, the overall asset may have a 24-month unlimited warranty. And then parts within that or components within that asset may have different service level agreements. So a part might be warranted by a third party for an additional 5 years, for a total of 7 years. You have to be able to have insight into that at the time that the service is dispatched. And so being able to break that down and be able to get that level of visibility is critically important. And again, many customers struggle with that. So asset visibility, asset timeline, understanding what services have been executed against an asset, and potentially what services are scheduled to be executed against that asset. Parts management, parts capture are critically important to most manufacturers because they want the right parts to be used. They want their parts to be used. Anything other than that creates revenue leakage or missed opportunities for revenue. And then finally, there are some really in-depth processes that are often involved with asset-centric service. Things like managing RMAs and returns, advanced exchanges. Is the customer entitled? Do we have monitoring for shipping so that we can expose to the customer when a component for a larger production piece is going to arrive? Do we have in place the tools to be able to process returns when they get to a warehouse or a shop? Is there a way to track what parts are failing in a context where something has had to be returned? Do we have a refurbishment process where we're taking those parts, extracting them from one component, modifying or fixing those parts, and then providing them back into refurbished stock so that they could be used for a repair in another context? These are all considerations that manufacturers are making, and these are not simple processes to execute. What I encourage you to do as you encounter customers who are asking these kinds of questions of you and whether or not Salesforce can manage the use cases that you're bringing. You hear any of these kinds of terms, bring us in. Come talk with us. We're more than happy to provide real life examples of how customers are managing their complex assets on Salesforce with the help of NeuroFlash and Asset Orbit. Thank you. And one thing I'll encourage you to do. So if you get this conversation with your Salesforce co-sellers and they show interest, schedule a follow-up meeting. Bring me in. bring Alan Diaz de Leon and bring Dan Nolan in, folks who have been spending the last several months and even years working specifically with asset-centric businesses to deliver on these kinds of promises. So yeah, we're more than happy to talk to your sellers, and let's get after it. Let's sell some Asset Orbit.